Opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not WSTU. WSTU does not endorse any products mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU.
The Treasure Coast longest-running local talk radio show is on the air. The Treasure Coast Forum, brought to you by Shannon Square Rental Properties and Chapman and Plama Law. Get interested, get educated, get involved, and give us a call with your opinions at 220-9788. And here's your host of the Treasure Coast Forum.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Treasure Coast Forum. I'm Reese Gabbett, and I'm here with some friends.
Connor Fuchs from...
Wait a minute. Let's get you fired.
Oh, there I am.
There.
Connor Fuchs from South Fork High School.
Maddie Davis from South Fork High School.
Sam Crombie from Martin County High School.
Boo.
Oh, come on. We're all teammates here,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, all right. Very
I don't
good.
know about that one.
Okay.
Anyway,
All right. So you guys are fresh back from
Yep.
your tour up in Tallahassee.
So for those of you who don't know, the four of us, the reason we're here is because we're in a club called Youth in Government.
Mm-hmm.
And once a year, we go to something called State Assembly, which is when kids all across the state go up to the Capitol in Tallahassee. We go into the Capitol building, and we perform a mock government. So we'll have a legislative branch, executive branch, and a judicial branch. Now, Osiris was supposed to come here today, but I don't think he made it. He's in the executive branch. He was
He was in the cabinet.
Attorney General?
Attorney General.
he was the attorney general,
Wow.
and the four
You
of
get
us.
to put people in jail, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right.
Absolutely.
Nice.
And the four of us were in the legislative branch.
Okay. All right.
And for those of you who don't know, each of us had our own separate bill,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll just go down the line. But just a teaser, one of us made it all the way.
Sweet.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So should we start with you or we start with Connor?
Let's start with Reese.
All right, we'll start with me. So,
Okay.
for those of you, I've talked about this a few times. My bill is related to monitoring where child support funds go
Mhm.
in order to make sure every single dollar is going towards the child. Unfortunately, mine didn't. Here, I'll break down like how the bill process works.
Yeah.
So,
You have to get people to sign on to sponsor your bill too, right?
you can do that. It's not necessary though.
Oh, okay.
So, when you first show up to state assembly, you're usually put in a group of 10, and in that group, you'll present your bill, and then everybody will rank it based off of 4 factors. It's preparedness of the author, importance to Florida, what is it like? Feasibility and debatability. This is to ensure that every bill that we actually talk about has all 4 of those things, so it's an interesting debate.
Right.
After that, based on they take the lowest rankings of that group and put it, and then they merge 2 of those groups together into 2 separate second committees,
All right.
and they do the same thing, and then they take the lowest rated bills and then put them into your final what's it called?
The docket.
The docket, which is a ranking of bills based off of the best scoring bills in order.
Okay. All right.
And we're split off into the House and the Senate. Now,
This all has to be done in a fairly quick
this
process.
was all
2 to 3
done
days.
in
Yeah.
this whole like decision making process of what's going to be on the docket was in one day.
Right.
Yeah.
So me, Connor,
So
and
this
Maddie,
is a sped up version of what really
Yeah.
how the
Mhm.
sausage is made there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
times like 100 speed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So me, Connor, and Maddie, we were in the Senate, which is for usually seniors who have been there for 3 or more years.
Mhm.
Sam was in the House of Representatives because he's been in Young for 2 years now.
Okay.
So unfortunately, my bill didn't make it through the first committee. There was some speculation as to why, but I mean, no hard feelings. I got to debate a bunch of great bills. So
All right.
all right,
Okay.
well, we'll move on to Connor now.
Well, Mr. Connor here, my bill on recreational marijuana got placed on the docket, but unfortunately, due to time constraints, the Senate did not get to debate on it. Would have been a really interesting debate, but it's all right. But yeah, basically my bill was about legalizing recreational marijuana and taxing it and sending those funds to the Department of Education. So, yeah.
And in the Senate on the docket can change, but everybody in the Senate, first of all, the president of the Senate has to allow this order to be called.
Right.
And then you need a 2/3 vote in order to move anything around on the docket. And unfortunately, we were 2 votes shy of moving Connors up on the docket.
Okay. All
We'll
right.
move on to Maddie.
So that's part of that consensus building I was talking about earlier, right?
Right.
When you get sponsors that's
You have to
helping to
network
build.
and yeah.
Right.
All right. So my bill was about raising the age you can drop out of high school to 18. And there was also an amendment to that where at 16, you can file an application with the school district that you need to drop out for home reasons or financial reasons or stuff like that. So I made it through first and second committee, and I was placed 9th out of 16 on the docket for the Senate. So I didn't get to present until the second day. Sorry, my phone keeps going off. So I presented kind of late. So I was like, oh yeah, probably not gonna like get to present it in the House, but I'll have stuff ready for my co-sponsor just in case. So I was getting ready to send stuff over to my co-sponsor, and I get a text from her.
The way that this works is after if we're in the Senate, if it passes through the Senate, it moves on to the House, but you don't get to present it in the House. You have a member of the House present it for you. That's
Correct.
That's what the co-sponsor.
And vice
yeah.
versa for House.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was getting ready to send my materials over to the House so that my co-sponsor would be ready. And I get a text from her that they did something different to get my bill into the cabinet. So basically what it was called was unanimous consent. And the House was moving kind of slow, and they wanted to send more bills to the cabinet. So what they did was, instead of going through the full debate process, each member of the House got a couple minutes to read over my bill, and then they decided if it was worthy of being sent to the cabinet. It's basically what everyone in the House decided that it could go. Is that how it
Yeah.
worked?
It was unanimous.
It was almost unanimous. Essentially, like it was two bills. It was Maddie's and another bill, and they gave us like 5-10 minutes to read over them. And instead of doing like non-debatable technical questions and like rounds of pro debate, we just voted on them, and both got passed because, like she said, our House was running a little slow. We had a lot of people debating a lot of bills. A lot of time spent arguing. So we just sent those two directly to the cabinet. There was still we caucused up and we were talking about it and stuff. But yeah, so we sent her bill straight to the cabinet.
Cool.
So
And what happened from there?
So I'm freaking out because my friend is like, oh yeah, you already passed. I was like, oh God, that means I'm going to the cabinet soon. So a cabinet member came, they got me, and I was presenting in there, and it was going really well.
So
and
it's
then
the separate chambers that you go to, right?
yes,
cabinet
that's the
chamber.
executive. So basically you have DLAs. I don't know what that stands for, but they help you out. So you have one pro and one con. So I gave my con person like my arguments that were like against my bill, but I was able to rebuttal them so I could still make it look good.
Smart.
I spent a lot of time on those.
Yeah.
So then they're going down the line. Each executive cabinet member can ask you 2 questions. So a friend of mine, actually, she asked me a question about like the application to drop out of 16. So I started explaining it. And then she goes, oh, no. Where is that in your bill? And I was like, oh, it's an amendment. And they all just kind of look at each other. They were like, oh. So I didn't think about it. And then afterwards, I found out that they had lost my amendment. One of the most important parts of my bill was missing. So I ended up not getting passed because of that. Yeah.
So it was a paperwork snafu.
Yeah. Somewhere in transportation, that part of my bill got lost.
Oh.
So
Oh,
Yeah.
disappointment.
I think it was
But
sabotage on
it
purpose.
was,
Yeah, a little
Probably.
sabotage at this event.
but it was moving along quite nicely otherwise.
yeah, it went great. It was fun. I had a good time.
Yeah, and then so my bill was a bill to invest in composting facilities in Florida, organic composting facilities. And so I was actually a committee chair, which means that during that first committee where we have like 13, 14 people, I was running the actual chamber with other people. So we'd call people up, they'd present their bills, we'd collect the ballot sheets and send it off to be calculated. But we still get to present our bills. And so I made it through first and second committee, not a lot of problems. I was in the House, like they said. I ended up being, I think, second or third on our docket. So I presented pretty early because we have like one kind of full day of doing it. And then like the next day we have like a couple hours to present our bills. And so I think like early the first day I got it through, and then I had to find a co-sponsor in the Senate. Got a co-sponsor. I was kind of panicking because I didn't really like get to brief my co-sponsor on a lot of my information. So I was actually, because you can't speak, like they said, but you can be in the chamber. So I left the House and I was in the Senate.
Not on the floor though.
Not on the floor. So you're up in like the gallery. And this is like the actual Florida House representatives and Senate, right? So this is like actual chambers. So I'm upstairs in the gallery. And I'm watching this person that I designated to co-sponsor my bill present it. And I was having like a panic attack because
She's just completely butchering it.
she was really butchering it. And like they were asking her like really simple questions like, like the point of my bill was organic waste gets turned into fertilizer for farmers. And someone asked her like as like a lob question, like, so what do you do with this organic waste? And she couldn't answer that. So I was like kind of having a panic attack up there. I was like pointing at like because Connor Reese, I was like
we were
you know,
down there struggling trying to defend his bill.
we were in a group chat with Sam, and he's just hitting us with things after things, and it was just getting
I'm
all
gonna say
jumbled
this,
up.
say that. And so thank God it got passed. I have no idea how.
It was really. It wasn't actually that
There was
narrow.
like 18 to
No.
14, but like when they were voting, I was like, there's like doors that go into the floor, and I was like behind the doors, and I was freaking out. So to give you context, when we got there, my bill wasn't because we have a bill book with like a couple hundred bills. Not,
and that's how every single delegate can look at every single bill when they're presenting.
right.
So you can like pick it apart.
And my bill wasn't in there. I was actually co-sponsoring a bill with Nick Campy. And neither of our bills, they just gave us a random bill from like last year. So they messed up our bills. And so day one, we had to fix it. And so for the entire time, I had to bring around a physical copy of my bill and show it to every single person in the chamber, which kind of made that difficult. So everyone in the Senate and the House was like, what's the bill? Like, we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And no one knew because no one had a copy of it.
We didn't even get physical copies of it. Our friend had a picture of it, and we had to call a caucus so that she could airdrop it to us. But phones aren't in order during debate, so we had to look at it for a couple minutes and then put our phones away and try to remember everything. So
Yeah, it was really rough.
Wow.
But so I got it passed in the Senate, and then I got like a DLA to bring me to the cabinet, like Maddie. And so like just for as context, the cabinet is like made up of like 10 or 11 department heads. So like you have the governor, the lieutenant governor, Department of like legal affairs.
Nicole, who comes on here, was the Department of Health.
Yeah.
Okay.
Osiris is Osiris.
He's the Attorney General.
Attorney General.
And all like the they're called POs, presiding officers. They're elected by everybody in youth and government. So we all elected the youth governor, the lieutenant governor, Osiris, and actually, I'll say that later. But
we have another friend who's in the executive cabinet too. And so like 12, 13 people. And I presented, I think I did pretty well. But, when I walked in, they asked, they're supposed to have my bill. They're supposed to like talk about it for a few minutes beforehand. And they asked me, oh, is this your bill? And I said, no, that's not my bill. So they like got a copy of my bill as I was walking in, and they had to like pass it around and look at it and stuff. And so, yeah, it was rough. But the questions were fine and stuff. And so I ultimately got my bill passed, which was really cool. And I was very excited about that. And so, yeah, it was just a great experience overall.
So what do you think the possibility is that the actual state house and state senate will take up your bill as a measure?
slim.
Extremely slim. The bills that have been taken up before are,
I mean, when they pass in the mock session, some of them are brought forward.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're usually bills that are like low infrastructure, low intensity stuff like, like something that's like policy wise, not a lot of like implementation.
Mm.
My bill was investing $50 million into these composting facilities off of like a 2.5% tax on like cigarette cartons. So there's a lot of like specifics with it. So unless I get a congressman or woman who really hates cigarettes and really loves organic composting plants, probably not going to be taken up. But it was still a great experience otherwise.
Ah,
Yeah.
And
all right.
then so after we find out about whose bill gets passed and recognizes all these awards,
Right.
we find out who got elected as our PO. And this year is the first year that a Treasure Coast delegate is the new youth governor of Florida Youth and Government.
Hey, all right.
Yeah,
Very cool.
Solomon.
Yes.
Solomon Scholl is the new governor.
Well, we'll have to bring him on actually.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
never been
I-
on here,
I
I don't
bet-
think.
Yeah, no, I think he'd be cool to talk with.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also, Frankie DeCesare is also chief
Yep.
financial officer now. So we have 2 POs this year or
Nice.
next year. Yeah.
Big positions.
Yep.
Nice.
State Assembly was a success this year.
Mhm. And
It was.
since we're all seniors, this was our last one.
Yeah.
Right. So I was just going to touch on that. So you're all seniors, so I won't see you here in these seats next year unless you want to come by as a just
Oh,
as visit.
Guest
right?
appearances.
See
Yeah,
me up
guest-
at Gainesville.
Yeah. So when are we going to be introducing the juniors that are in youth and government?
That's what I'm going to start prioritizing
Mhm.
now because I don't think I came last year before State Assembly. I think the first time I came was like
After State Assembly, I think.
Exactly.
yeah, like a few months after, like maybe a month after. So there's one individual who's bringed it up in the past that she wants to become the next host, but she hasn't been able to come on yet. So
all right.
I'm gonna I'm going to try to get her on as
Okay.
soon as possible, so
Good.
we can introduce
figure it
you.
out.
And yeah,
But we do have a lot of freshmen and sophomores too who are really interested in it.
Good.
A lot of new faces this year, so there will be no shortage of
Yeah.
participants on the
Yeah.
Treasure Coast Forum next
All
year.
right.
Mhm.
Going
Perhaps
forward.
you guys can call in. Too.
Oh, of course,
Of
yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So, once again, the news. We're not short of. We got about 8 minutes or so before we have to take our station break. But before we go to break, you want to talk about some of the national items in the news that have been bubbling up. What do you think? What do you guys want to touch on?
You want to touch on the international news?
I mean, whatever you guys want to do.
International.
Yeah.
Sure.
Some
Sam?
interesting things we were discussing earlier at Chick-fil-A, our meeting spot before the
Right.
Treasure Coast Forum.
Right.
Um,
Your pre-show. Yes.
Our pre-show eat.
Yes.
We were talking about currently the India-Pakistan conflict that's going on in Kashmir.
Yeah.
Been a lot of
and that's really
lot of
gone under
trouble.
the radar as
Mhm.
far as the news
Yeah.
cycle is concerned. So I understand there's a pilot that's being returned to India from Pakistan, and the hope is it'll ratchet down some of the concerns.
So what happened was there's a terrorist group that operates within the Kashmir region that is fighting for Pakistani independence, and they've been active since about like 2000. I can't pronounce the name, but it's
So the
short for JEM,
independence from Pakistan.
the independence for Pakistan. So they want to liberate, quote unquote, liberate Kashmir, the Kashmir region, so it's under Pakistani sovereignty instead of
Oh.
India.
Oh, so they want to change sides.
Yeah, and so
And
Pakistan.
Pakistan and India, there's no love lost between these two countries. They both have a nuclear arsenal,
Right.
which is not a good thing.
Yeah, they've been fighting over this region
Right.
since India gained its independence in the 40s.
Mhm.
And so what happened was this notorious terrorist group that's operated since the early 2000s and has caused a lot of grief for the Indian government. Not really helped relations is there was actually a caravan of Indian military personnel in the Kashmir region, and a terrorist in a car just rammed into it with explosives and killed everyone. And so the Indian government and a lot of international bodies believe that this terrorist group is sponsored by the Pakistani government. It's illegal in Pakistan to be part of this group, but a lot of people know that the group operates within Pakistan, and it seems like very lenient on enforcing that law. So they accuse.
Isn't Pakistan the same country that housed Osama bin Laden too for a while?
Was it Pakistan?
Was it?
I don't know.
I think
They don't have a good track record with
Yeah.
being harsh towards
good-
terrorist
Yeah,
organizations.
good broker for peace. Yeah.
Right. And so in retaliation,
It was indeed Pakistan.
it was indeed Pakistan. Yes. Not a good track record on that.
Yeah.
And so what happened was about 2 weeks after India went over the ceasefire area between Pakistan and India and Kashmir and actually bombed one of the training camps for JEM. And what happened was the Pakistani government didn't like that, right? Because they violated their sovereignty in their airspace. And so a day later, they responded by flying into India and shooting like missiles and bullets into just like open areas.
Oh,
And-
that's special. Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah.
when the Indian Air Force decided to shoot down a Pakistani fighter jet, and then an Indian jet got shot down, and that's how they captured that Indian military individual. And then and that was 2 days ago.
Right.
And so since then, it's just been a lot of tense moments between the two countries.
Right. Right.
And like you said, they're both nuclear, so it's like not the last thing, not the best
promising.
thing. Yeah,
Right,
not very promising.
Right. Well, all right.
So we'll have to see how that plays out because they've gone to war 3 times over the Kashmir border. They haven't really fixed the problem. So they're definitely willing to go to war. I don't know with nuclear weapons, but it's not good when 2 pretty powerful countries are shooting each other's military craft down.
Exactly right.
Mhm.
Well, we've got that and much more to cover when we come back. So stick with us.
Welcome back to the Treasure Coast Forum. Before the break, we were talking about India, Pakistan, and now we're going to take it back to the United States and talk about some things that have been happening in our local area.
Yeah, because we try to cover local, state, and national, and sometimes international events. And
Yeah.
so we've got a thing that's been, it's bubbled up pretty
Actually,
hard.
while we were
Yeah.
in state assembly, this is when we heard about it.
So I mean, it's kind of it's really taken over much of the news cycle, right?
So when we were gone, we heard about this whole prostitution ring scandal that's been going on in Jupiter, and so essentially, there's been a prostitution ring that's been run at a spa in Jupiter, and they've had a lot of clients, a lot of high-profile clients. Robert Kraft and people paying a lot of money to use this prostitution ring. And I think I read somewhere that they were making, millions of dollars, and so. Essentially, it's kind of hits close to home because there's a lot of people involved in like local communities and stuff that you'd never think, but it's become like a pretty big thing. We know people who are involved with it, and just like people again, you never think about it, but yeah, it's like our little local area being broadcast on a national level.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, national. Yeah, exactly right. So Jupiter, Florida, and I guess there's a handful of other businesses have been closed in addition to the Jupiter one. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like these past few years, our little South Florida is starting to get broadcasted everywhere. Like with
Not really in good ways.
no, never in good ways. I remember my dad lives like within walking distance of Stoneman Douglas,
right.
and I was driving to his house like the weekend after, and it was just so many it was just like flowers and all these sad things. It's just so weird to have like all these national, even sometimes like world breaking headlines happening right here.
Right. It's difficult to process.
Yeah.
How about Omar Mateen went to Martin County High School? The Pulse nightclub shooter bought his body armor up at Lotus Gunworks, I think in Jensen Beach, and a couple other things in our area. So I think we need some we need positivity in our area.
We do.
Yeah.
Not a lot of good people coming out of Martin County.
I think there's
and Palm Beach
plenty of
County.
positivity. It's just the bad things tend
Yeah.
to take up.
Oh,
most
How
of
yeah,
the
the
news
headlines.
works.
Sadly.
All right. Well, we touched on that.
Yeah.
So, and I guess that it's still a developing story, so there's not much more to talk about. You
Right.
know.
We'll keep you posted though.
Correct.
The moral of the story is prostitution and human trafficking are not good.
Well,
I'm
said.
giving a
That
thumbs
was
up right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Actually, no. Yeah, that was a bill at state assembly that didn't get passed, right?
We killed it in the Senate. It
Yeah.
came from the
It
House.
was
We
a-
killed it in the Senate.
Bill
Legalizing-
2, was it legalize or decriminalize prostitution? I think it was legalize, right?
So
Legalized.
yes, legalize
yes.
and
Yeah.
make it recreational. And actually, a big issue that we missed in the Senate. I don't know if Dylan told you. It never states in the bill that you have to be over 18.
It does, but the problem was the bill went into effect in 2020, and the licensing that made the regulations for who can be a prostitute didn't go into effect until 2021. So with that, you could have had legal prostitution with no regulation
A lot of
for a full
unregulated
year.
prostitution.
And STD testing was every 6 months.
Which is
far
not
too
enough.
long.
Yeah. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's an interesting topic that you guys picked up, decided to debate. How long did that bill float around before it failed?
In the House where it originated, we had a really thorough debate, and I thought that it was going to be much closer than it actually was. I thought that it was going to get killed, and ended up passing with a pretty large margin. But we debated it for a while. We were trying to get through more bills, so we cut down on our speaking cycles. But for that bill, we extended it and had another round of pro and con debate just so we could speak on it. So in the House, it was
why
pretty
do you
long.
think it passed in the House?
I don't know. We the House is much larger than the Senate. I think we have
Right.
80 something kids.
Mhm.
And another thing is that when you have delegations, our delegation has over 100 people, what happens is whether or not a bill is good, there's a lot of delegation loyalty. And so let's say in the Williams House where I was, if I have 25 people from our delegation in there, it doesn't matter how bad my bill is, they're most likely going to stand and support it. So it could have been a combination of the author having a lot of delegation support. Maybe people were being optimistic about the bill and didn't want to listen to con arguments, but it passed with a pretty large majority. So
Did it come out of Treasure Coast?
No.
I don't think so.
No, it didn't. What was the third bill? Was there 3 bills that made it all the way?
We
Or was it 4?
from our
No, in total.
well,
That
we had
passed?
That passed all the way.
Dylan
From the Williams?
Dylan Sams and what else? Yeah, and Williams.
I don't remember the third one. I know Bryce has got shot down.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the other
I
one.
think it was just 2 in Williams, right?
No, there,
No, there
there
was
was
one
another
more.
one.
It
Was it the
I don't remember.
It was a girl.
The Miranda rights. Was it that one?
Was it?
Oh no, it was Lauren Beatty. The
It was B.
legal separation. It made legal
was it.
separation a
Because-
thing
Oh,
in
yeah,
Florida.
It was legal separation is different from divorce at where I didn't like the bill where
It made sense. I was like, yeah, why not?
it was you can legally leave your spouse and
Right.
collect child support but not divorce. And the issue I saw with it is it can be one-sided. So out of nowhere someone could just, okay, I'm leaving, I'm going to take some money.
All right, I'm taking the cash, but I'm
Yeah.
not being a partner with you and anything else.
Yeah.
All right.
That was the issue I had with it, but that got passed also.
It got passed.
Mhm.
Wow, interesting.
And there were a couple bills from our delegation that got shot down in the House, like even before it got over to the Senate. And there were some really good bills. I know our friend Frankie, who's now the CFO, he had a bill about I think it was pensions
Yeah.
for like government workers or something like that. And I thought it was a pretty good bill. Got shot down. We had another
They
bill.
got shot down because maybe people didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that was
probably.
it.
That's probably. I think it's important that your bill, on top of like having that debatability and feasibility and stuff, is also pretty streamlined because
Mhm.
people do get turned off to listening to
They get in the weeds.
right,
Yeah.
and so that impacted it pretty poorly. And I know there's someone else in the House who had a really good bill, and like we had our friend Sam. She had a bill to place a recycling can next to every single garbage can across the state of Florida. And it was a really good bill because it's really like, it's not a lot of money, right? It's a recycling bin. It actually saves schools and school districts costs because instead of just not categorizing like trash and recycling. So what happens is they just throw recycling and trash into one bin. And what happens is it makes it more expensive for the district to give it to waste management. And so when you put them into 2 separate bins, it makes it more cost effective for schools. So like it was cost effective, it made sense, low infrastructure needed, and it just got shot down. So, and then we had bills like the prostitution bill go through. So it happens.
What are they smoking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of smoking, we also had a decriminalizing marijuana bill.
I figured that was,
There was-
yes.
There was 2.
Yeah.
Connors and then another one. And then
Mhm.
another one that just wasn't it like all
All
drugs?
drugs.
Decriminalizing all.
Wow.
Using Portugal as an example, yeah.
Yeah. Go Portugal.
Yep.
Wow. And so what tell me about Portugal.
Well, apparently, according to their statistics, Portugal has seen a decrease in overdoses and
Overall drug use.
overall drug use, which is kind of hard to believe, but
I think that because we went to Costa Rica a couple years ago,
Yeah.
and to our surprise, we didn't partake in any illegal drug activity. But to our surprise, almost all drugs are not legalized, but they're decriminalized in Costa Rica. So people like go there for the sole purpose like drug tourism. But so I think that in like some of these countries, the drug problem is so bad that the government has no option but to decriminalize them, and it's just like at such a terrible level that when they decriminalize it or legalize it, it goes down inherently. I don't know if that would work in the United States.
part
but
of me thinks it's just going down because people just don't report it. Like
Right.
The government doesn't have to report it anymore. It's
That's
not-
true.
That's
so-
true.
Changes the stat levels.
Exactly. Yeah.
I get
I
it.
mean, it's just not out in the public anymore. So I don't know.
I don't know. But we had good bills.
So
Yeah.
when you guys are crafting your bills before you bring it to the chambers, is there somebody that helps you with the verbiage on it? And how does that? And you have to do your elevator speech and all that.
Usually
right?
the upperclassmen will help the underclassmen.
Okay, but nobody outside of youth and government.
No.
No
No.
outside.
It's usually just
We go
within.
to FDC in the fall, and we can work with the other delegates in the state to work on our bills. But there's really no like adult kind of outside influence. It's just us helping each other. So
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but I do know that like we were kind of talking about how some bills do end up going to the actual House.
Mhm.
And we actually there's someone in youth and government. in North Florida who had a bill. I don't think it actually got passed first or second committee, which is kind of funny because it's actually being brought up in the House and Senate. But it's a bill to put it's like a fire alarm in schools, but instead it's blue and it's like a police alarm. So if something happens, you have extremely quick dispatch. Because I know that at Stoneman Douglas there was like a lot of miscommunication, and so police officers didn't know either A, where to go, and B, to actually get there. So that's a bill that didn't pass any of the committees, but it's being taken up by, I think it's the Florida Senate. And so that's pretty cool. And then we've had people, alumni from Martin County, who have actually had bills brought to a national level and are currently being circulated. So,
Wow. And the House and the Senate in DC.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I believe that was a bill regarding EpiPens and I think like public facilities, because that's a big problem. As someone who suffers from nut and shellfish allergies, I do know that in a lot of places, like food, like restaurants and establishments and stuff like that, you'd expect them to have EpiPens. Because a lot of times you go to these restaurants and you'll ask or say I have these allergies, and
Right.
they want to be careful about it. They don't want to serve you something
Right.
that's going to make you sick. But even then, people still get sick. And in a food establishment, they don't have EpiPens or epinephrine or anything. So I think that's what it talked about. But
Well, I mean, there's a whole nother conversation when you get involved in EpiPens, because that company there's only one company that produces that product.
right, yeah,
And a private individual bought that company, and when they did that, price was like $16
yeah, and they
it went up to over $100, I think, and but then he got slapped hard,
Mhm.
and so he moderated the price a little bit, but it's still an expensive.
Yeah.
At $16 is doable for private businesses to have some of that on hand.
Mhm.
It's not a
For-
budget breaker,
right. And another thing is for me, we have to have two because you need to have a minimum two.
Right.
Usually people need 2 doses, and then even after that, you still have to go to the hospital. But we have 2 at the house, we have 2 at the school, 2 on me at all times. So after everything summed up, we're spending almost $1,000 on EpiPens on the many we have scattered all over the place. So that's definitely an issue with it. I do know that I think there are auto injectors that are coming to the market because that 20-year drug copyright or whatever it is on it is wearing out. So there are generics that are flooding into the market, which should be good for that. But yeah, it's definitely a problem with accessibility too.
Right.
So like a lot of other drugs,
Yeah.
which is a shame.
Right, and isn't the Congress actually looking at having a better streamlined drug plan for?
I hope so.
Yeah, I think that's
Talk
one of the
about
measures they're
it
looking
like
at.
just a backwards.
Well, one of the things before we go to break, I saw this because as I was prepping for today's show, let's see if I can find it where I saw it. But there was one of the websites I was looking at was talking about a Medicare for All bill is being floated right now in the Democrat-led House, and which would largely outlaw private insurance companies.
That's interesting.
So, I mean, I don't see that even being addressed in the Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that'll
not
die
touched.
in the House.
But that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I do know that I think a couple of days ago, the Senate brought in a couple CEOs of some big pharmaceutical companies, and they were just, they were just roasting them.
Right.
So it's interesting because I think with the whole progressive movement now in the House, especially with all the Democrat candidates, I mean, if you think to 2016 election cycle,
Right.
there were not nearly as many Democrats running as there are this time around.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see if there's actual feasibility for passing legislation like this. Because, 10, 20 years ago, I doubt you'd think that'd be something that could be
Wouldn't even
possible.
bubble up. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so it'll be interesting to see what goes on with that.
Outlawing private insurance.
Well, essentially it would, because it'd be a government run healthcare.
Yeah.
And it's
Medicare for all. So so if you like standing in line and waiting, let's say you got a surgical procedure needs to be performed.
Where's the money coming from?
Well, it comes from Uncle Sam. They would strike a check, and if it cost,
Just higher taxes, or
well, yeah,
how that works?
ultimately the government would go bankrupt. So that's basically what happens. It'd end up like Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if
What
if
percentage-
if you like
which has
that,
also been bubbling up in the news recently
Yes.
with Maduro. Yeah.
Yes. So
We can talk about that after the break.
we can do that. Let's do that. Okay, so we'll look forward to that. We'll look at some of the other national and international things that are going on around us, and we'll be right back.
And welcome back to WSTU 1450. I am your new host, Connor Fuchs, and I am here with two of my acolytes, Sam Crombie and Maddie Davis, and we're gonna get right into it.
Reese has been impeached.
Yep,
We're
he's
under new
gone.
leadership now.
What is an acolyte?
That's like a religious follower.
Oh,
So
okay.
I am the new Messiah. Okay, that's very sacrilegious.
You're the new leader, huh? Leader of the pack. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Fantastic.
Well done. So we're educational and fun filled as well.
And slightly sacrilegious.
yes, somewhat. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just kind of glancing over some headlines. One of the headlines was, and it seems to me, how long has Justice Kavanaugh been seated?
What 3-4 months?
4, 5, 6 months.
It's all a blur.
Yeah.
Right,
It's,
right.
It's going by fast.
More than a couple of months,
Yeah,
right?
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So they're just now getting to the point where the Senate was able to advance the Trump pick to replace Justice Kavanaugh in the lower court, the position he held. So you talk about how quickly you guys had to move, in your couple of days up in Tallahassee. You see how slowly
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
sausage is made up there. And, one of the things that they really complain about is the judicial backlog of rulings,
Oh, yeah.
because it's just a shortage of judges. There's no shortage of people to be judges, but to get placed behind a bench is a big issue.
Yeah, you have all those committees and everyone testifying. I mean, you think about just how, and it's publicized, but like how Kavanaugh's hearings, like you had multiple hearings taking up entire days, and there are like the Senate Judiciary Committee. There are like hundreds of those committees that have special hearings just like that.
Right.
So you can only imagine how much speaking and suit wearing goes on, and
Oh yeah.
how much
Yeah.
time you got to spend as a politician doing that stuff. So-
Speaking of Kavanaugh, in history the other day, we were talking about McCarthyism.
Okay.
McCarthy back in, when was it? Back in
50s, 60s.
50s,
Yes.
60s.
Mhm. Yeah, 50.
He was famous for accusing
40s.
just random people,
Of being
seemingly
communist.
random
Mhm.
people of being communist.
Right.
And basically, I mean, as soon as you were accused, you were done. Like
Right.
you were a communist for
Right.
sure. And
Once your name went out in the public domain.
and so
these are Hollywood people that
Right.
he accused, and a lot of
He
people.
accused the U.S. Army.
he accused the U.S. Army. He accused
What a hero.
Eisenhower indirectly. So, as my history teacher, Mr. Hedman, is describing this to me, he stops using McCarthy's name entirely and just is describing the situation, and it starts sounding very familiar to the Kavanaugh situation.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
What a clever move on his part.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he did it
On purpose.
intentionally, but
I would think he probably did.
it sounded strikingly similar.
History repeats itself.
So I don't
Nancy
know.
Pelosi is McCarthy confirmed.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought that was interesting, though, how that works.
Yes, indeed. So there's some interesting news. I'm trying to pull it up so it's not written in Spanish, because I don't read Spanish very well.
I can
There's the
try.
BBC.
We can
Yeah.
try.
Got to get Nick on here to do some translating. Oh,
Yeah.
Speaking of Nick,
Yeah, how's Nick doing?
great.
Good.
Today, actually last night, he got the Joe Kordick Youth Leadership Award, which is a scholarship. And then today, this morning, he found out he got into the Naval Academy.
Well,
Ooh,
congratulations.
Navy man.
Yeah.
Nick. All right. And how's he
Military.
doing with his extra equipment on his appendage?
He's doing pretty good.
Yeah.
He's taken off the brace. He doesn't walk with a crutch anymore.
Good.
Yeah,
Pretty-
he's
I mean,
walking around.
Mhm.
Pretty
Ah.
miraculous recovery, if I do say so
Yeah,
myself.
well, of course, he's got youth on his side,
Yeah.
which helps.
Oh, yeah.
Because at my age, so I broke my foot about the same time. So I finally got out of my boot a couple of weeks ago, and I saw the doctor yesterday, and he says to me, well, for 6 to 8 more weeks, I want you to be careful.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, so definitely, so kudos for him.
He makes it
So,
look
yeah.
easy.
Yeah, he makes it look easy. So thank goodness for being young and good healing. Venezuela crisis. How much aid is getting in? And the answer is very
Not a lot.
little.
Zero. Where's it
Very
all
little.
going?
Well, it's being stopped at the border. Maduro is not allowing the aid to get in.
Yeah, there's a
Mhm.
video of some Colombian aid truck trying to burst through the Venezuelan border, and someone's recording, and the truck goes like bursting through the border, and like 3 or 4 Venezuelan military trucks are chasing it and shooting at it.
Yeah.
They actually ended up taking out the truck and killing the people in it. So yeah, it's not a very good situation there.
Not a good job.
Yeah, nothing says our country's okay. Like we don't need humanitarian aid, so we're gonna kill anyone who tries to deliver to our country.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
love Nicolas Maduro.
Right.
Great guy.
So, Venezuela government has denied entry at its borders to hundreds of tons of humanitarian aids containing supplies from the United States, Brazil, and Colombia were turned away. The U.S., which supports the Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido, says it's offering to provide $20 million of humanitarian supplies. But despite the recent standoff, not all the international assistance has been rejected. The Venezuelan government has praised Russia, an ally of President Nicolas Maduro, for sending over 300 tons and has been transported to Venezuela. So if it's coming from Russia, they're willing to accept
Yeah,
it.
so they're okay with the Russians, huh? Not with the Americanas.
Yeah.
So what we got to do is dress up like Russians,
Oh, yeah.
and then be like, hey, we've got some pretty good aid for you.
All you need is some Cossack cats and
Yeah.
you're all set,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and then boom,
Yeah, you're
crisis fix.
Yeah.
South America saved.
Okay. Wow, how weird is that?
That's a bad situation down there, though. It's
Yeah,
a
it
bad
really
deal.
is. Fashion fight right now in Texas. School changes the dress code to battle teen vaping epidemic.
How
Really? Now, how does that work?
Does dress code affect vaping? Exactly?
I would imagine because maybe the type of clothes that they're wearing allows them to conceal carry the stuff.
Well, you know, those vapes are pretty small, so I'm not sure unless they
Yeah.
have a no clothing policy. I don't know
Yeah,
how that's gonna work.
Maybe,
Uh-oh.
maybe that could be the fix.
Well, maybe.
Then you can't carry anything.
Good
So-
precedence
I
to
mean-
set. The first all no clothes school in the United States.
Nudist
First
school.
nudist school? Yeah.
school.
All right,
That's got to be a progressive state. For
Yeah,
sure.
that's gonna go over really well.
I
hope so.
What does this article say?
A school district in Channing, Texas is updating its student dress code to combat the teen vaping epidemic. Channing Independent School District decided to modify the dress code for its schools after receiving tips that students were vaping on campus.
Snitches.
ABC 7 News reported. Let's see now. After investigating the claims, the superintendent of the schools districts, Robert McLean, found a couple of Juuls, Juuls. Is
Yep,
that
you
what
got
it
that
is?
right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And confiscated them from the students caught vaping are also reportedly given automatic in-school suspension. So
Ooh.
in-school suspension means you go to school but you can't go to class.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Right?
we get out of school, right?
Yeah,
You get like expulsion, right?
We have like zero tolerance. I think
Yeah.
that it's either like
That's weak
a
compared to
long
us.
time out of school or like expulsion.
Us, it's like I think like 1 day OSS.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's like you get caught once, you're OSS. Twice, you're expulsion. You're
Ye-
up for expulsion.
And even if you're 18, because like you can have them if you're 18, but they still don't
You
want
can't
that on
have them on
campus. So
Wow.
believe it or not, you can just walk into the bathroom at any time of the day and someone's going to be, because you know, it's like cigarettes, like back in the day.
Right.
You can smell them. And like, at least my parents have told me that my parents said they used to get suspended a lot for smoking in school, but like they'd be like smoking like during class, and the vice principal would be like, "Oh, that's bad. Like, leave school, come back like the next day or whatever." And now, like, if you're caught with a little Juul, you know, game over. So
Yeah, interesting. It goes on to say McLean quickly discovered how big of an epidemic the vaping has become among teens. According to a federally funded survey, twice as many high school students use nicotine-based electronic cigarettes such as Juuls in the 2018 than the previous year, the largest single-year increase in the survey's 44-year history. So,
Wow.
yeah, so
that's a lot of nicotine.
no vaping in Texas. So there you go. And
So how'd they change the dress code to combat
Yeah.
this?
well, let's see now. The news. Okay, I'm going to read on. The news promoted the school districts to make the changes in the dress code, specifically targeting long sleeves,
Uh-oh.
which students have been using to hide their vaping by concealing the e-cigarette and exhaling the smoke into the sleeves.
Sam.
Ah,
No more
They're-
long sleeves.
So
They're gonna
what if
get me.
it's cold out?
You're out of luck.
Just wear
You
a
gotta-
t-shirt
gotta
so you
toughen
can't
up.
vape.
wear
Yeah.
like 6 tank tops all over each other.
Yeah, you got to toughen up.
How about just down your shirt instead of up the
It
up
probably
the sleeve?
doesn't get cold in Texas. Maybe that part of Texas, maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
You know, at least that if you're vaping in class, you're still paying attention. Now they're gonna have to go to the bathroom, you know, like go for a walk and then vape. So like I think it's counterintuitive, if anything.
Exactly.
Are there any studies to show like the effectiveness of vaping while trying to learn things? Maybe it like helps with memory retention. I don't know.
This reminds me of Sam during con debate in state assembly.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fun and enlightening. Congratulations, Sam.
Thank you very much.
And
Congrats.
congratulations to all the youth and government students that went up to Tallahassee this past session. And it was really cool. I'm glad to see you guys doing that, and look forward to seeing you next week.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Right here. Okay. You are listening to WSTU Stewart, Martin County's Heritage Station. Stay tuned for network news.